First contact. The night the stars fell, Tommy Anderson was exactly where his parents expected him to be, sneaking up to Miller's Hill with his telescope past bedtime. At 12 years old, he'd mastered the art of quietly sliding his bedroom window open, carefully navigating the creaky spots on the roof, and disappearing into the Minnesota darkness with his backpack full of astronomical equipment. Tonight was special. The Perseid meteor shower was peaking, and Tommy wasn't about to miss it because of something as trivial as a school night. He'd already set up his favorite spot, a small clearing at the top of the hill that gave him a perfect view of the northern sky, far from the dim lights of their small farming town. The first meteors were just beginning to streak across the sky when he saw it, a light that moved wrong. Meteors were supposed to flash quickly and fade, but this one curved, changed direction, and grew brighter. Tommy scrambled for his telescope, hands shaking with excitement as he tried to focus on the approaching light. Through the lens, he could see it wasn't a meteor at all. The object was smooth and oval-shaped, giving off a soft, pulsing glow that shifted between colors like an aurora. As it descended, Tommy realized with growing amazement that he was watching something impossible, a spacecraft, no bigger than his dad's pickup truck, coming in for a landing. The ship was silent as it glided down, but its trajectory was wrong. It was falling too fast, its glow flickering erratically. Tommy watched in horror as it clipped the top of an old oak tree and spun, crash-landing in the cornfield behind his family's barn with a muffled thud that he felt more than heard. For a long moment, Tommy stood frozen, his telescope forgotten. Every science fiction movie he'd ever watched played through his head, along with his mother's constant warnings about staying safe. The smart thing would be to run home and call someone. The police, the army, NASA maybe. But something about the ship's failing light pulled at him. It hadn't looked threatening. It had looked wounded. Before he could talk himself out of it, Tommy was sliding down the hill, his flashlight beam bouncing across the rows of corn as he ran toward the crash site. The ship had carved a shallow trench through the field, corn stalks broken and flattened in its wake. As Tommy approached, he could see its surface wasn't metal like he'd expected. It looked more like opaque glass, still faintly glowing but dimming by the second. A thin crack ran along one side, leaking what looked like starlight. "Hello," Tommy called out softly, immediately feeling foolish. What made him think whatever was inside would understand English? The ship's surface rippled like water, and a section simply melted away, forming an opening. Tommy's flashlight beam caught a glimpse of movement inside, and then something tumbled out onto the broken corn stalks. Tommy's flashlight nearly slipped from his grasp. Lying before him was a girl, or at least something that looked mostly like a girl. She appeared to be about his age, but her skin was translucent, glowing faintly from within like moonlight through ice. Her hair floated as if suspended in water, shimmering with colors that shifted with each shallow breath. She wore what looked like a simple dress made of light itself. Her eyes opened, and Tommy gasped. They were like looking into a kaleidoscope of stars. The alien girl tried to stand but stumbled, her glow flickering dangerously dim. Without thinking, Tommy rushed forward to catch her. The moment his hands touched her arms, a jolt of energy passed between them. The world around Tommy exploded into colors he'd never seen before, and his mind filled with images and feelings that weren't his own. He saw a beautiful world of crystal spires and light, then darkness coming, strange shadow ships filling the sky. He felt fear, loss, and a desperate flight across the stars. The alien girl pulled away, her glow brightening slightly. She looked at Tommy with those impossible eyes, and although her mouth didn't move, he heard a voice in his mind, like chimes in the wind. "Help, please." Tommy looked back at the house where his parents slept, then at the strange girl who had literally fallen from his stars. His astronomy books had taught him about light years and galaxies, but they'd never prepared him for this moment. Everything he knew about being careful and calling authorities felt small compared to the trust in those alien eyes. "Okay," he whispered, reaching out his hand. "I'll help you. I'm Tommy. The girl's glow pulsed once, and another wave of images and feelings washed over him. He understood somehow that her name was Maya, or at least that was the closest human word to the complex pattern of light that was her true name. As Tommy helped Maya to her feet, the ship behind them shuddered and began to lose its form, melting like ice in the sun until only a faint shimmer remained in the flattened corn. Maya swayed, her own light dimming again, and Tommy realized he needed to move quickly. The barn was closest, and he knew exactly where his dad kept the spare key. It wasn't much, but it would be shelter, and it would give him time to figure out what to do next. As he guided Maya through the darkness, supporting her weight, Tommy looked up at the meteor shower still flashing overhead. He'd wanted to see something extraordinary tonight, to witness something beyond his small-town life. Now, helping an alien girl who leaked starlight and spoke in colors, Tommy realized that sometimes the universe had a way of answering wishes in the most unexpected ways. What he didn't know, couldn't know, was that this night would change not just his life, but the fate of two worlds. As they made their way through the corn, the shadows at the edge of the field shifted in ways that had nothing to do with Tommy's flashlight beam. The night watched them with hungry eyes, and somewhere far above, in the darkness between stars, something began to move. Hidden light. The Anderson family barn had stood for 3 generations, its weathered beams holding countless secrets over the years. But as Tommy helped Maya climb into the hayloft, he knew this was by far its biggest. The alien girl's glow cast dancing shadows across the wooden walls, her light dimming and brightening with each breath like a faltering star. "You'll be safe here," Tommy whispered, pushing aside old hay bales to create a hidden corner. "At least until we figure something out." Maya's response came not in words, but in waves of color and emotion that washed over him. Gratitude, fear, and exhaustion swirled together like watercolors in his mind. As her knees buckled, Tommy quickly spread out the old sleeping bag he kept in the loft for stargazing. The moment Maya lay down, her light flickered dangerously low. Tommy's heart raced. Was she dying? Through their strange connection, he felt her weakness, as if she were a battery running out of charge. Light. Her voice chimed in his head. Need. Light. Tommy scrambled for his backpack, pulling out his flashlight. The beam seemed to energize her slightly, but it wasn't enough. Then he remembered the emergency lantern his dad kept on the workbench below. 2 minutes later, he had surrounded Maya with every light source he could find in the barn. Flashlights, lanterns, even his mom's old Christmas lights he'd found in a dusty box. As the lights surrounded her, Maya's glow steadied. Her star-filled eyes focused on Tommy, and a new series of images filled his mind. Her people, the luminary, drawing energy from their home star, their cities built to capture and channel light itself. Then darkness, shadow ships blocking out the sun, and a desperate exodus across the galaxy. "The ones who attack your world," Tommy said slowly. "They're still looking for you, aren't they?" Maya's light pulsed once in confirmation. More images followed. The Shadowkin, beings that consumed light, hunting the luminary across countless stars. Her people scattered, hiding on different worlds, trying to preserve what remained of their civilization. Maya was a refugee, one of the last of her kind, carrying something precious that the Shadowkin desperately wanted. "What are you carrying?" Tommy asked. "What's so important they'd chase you across the galaxy?" Before Maya could answer, a sound from below made them both freeze. The barn door creaked open, and footsteps echoed on the wooden floor. "Tommy," his mother's voice called out softly. "Honey, are you up here?" Tommy's heart stopped. Sarah Anderson had always had a sixth sense for knowing when her son was up to something, but this was the worst possible timing. Through their connection, he felt Maya's panic, saw her light beginning to brighten instinctively. "Stay dim," he whispered urgently. "I'll handle this." Climbing down the ladder, Tommy found his mother standing in her bathrobe, looking pale and tired. The chemotherapy had taken most of her hair, but her eyes were sharp as ever as they fixed on her son. "I saw lights in the barn," she said. "You know you're not supposed to be out here at night." "Sorry, Mom," Tommy replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "I was watching the meteor shower and lost track of time. Just packing up my stuff now." His mother's eyes narrowed slightly. "You're a terrible liar, Thomas Anderson. You always have been." She swayed slightly, and Tommy rushed forward to steady her. These dizzy spells had been getting worse lately. "Mom, you should be in bed," he said, genuine concern replacing his fear of discovery. "The doctor said you need rest." "The doctor says a lot of things," she murmured, but allowed Tommy to help her sit on a hay bale. As she caught her breath, she looked up at the hayloft thoughtfully. "You know, when I was your age, I used to hide things up there too. Stray cats mostly, once even a wounded fox." Tommy stared at his mother, wondering if the medication was making her confused. But her smile was knowing, almost mischievous. "Whatever you're hiding up there," she continued softly, "I trust you to tell me when you're ready. Just be careful, okay?" Before Tommy could respond, she stood carefully and made her way to the door. At the threshold, she paused. "Oh, and Tommy, there's soup in the freezer, in case your project gets hungry." After she left, Tommy climbed back to the hayloft in a daze. Maya's glow had brightened slightly, and he felt her curiosity about the exchange. "That was my mom," he explained, sitting beside her. She's sick, the doctors say." He couldn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. Maya had already seen the images in his mind. The hospital visits, the treatments that weren't working, the calendar in the kitchen with its countdown of remaining therapy sessions. Maya sat up slowly, her light steadying. She reached out one luminescent hand and placed it over Tommy's heart. The touch sent warmth spreading through his chest, and in his mind, he saw something new. The luminary's power to heal, to restore life forces using the energy of light itself. "You can heal people?" Tommy asked, hope rising in his chest. Maya's response was complex, emotions and images that conveyed both possibility and warning. Yes, she could heal, but using her power would reveal her presence. The Shadowkin could track the energy signature of luminary healing across vast distances. To save one life, she would risk bringing death to countless others. Tommy was about to respond when a new sensation hit them both, a deep, bone-chilling cold that had nothing to do with the night air. Maya's light flickered in terror, and through their connection, Tommy felt what she felt. Something vast and dark passing overhead, searching. The Shadowkin had already found Earth. They huddled together in the darkness of the hayloft, watching through gaps in the roof as something that looked like a piece of the night sky itself moved across the stars. Maya's light had dimmed to almost nothing, and Tommy held her hand tightly, feeling her trembling. In that moment, Tommy realized he faced an impossible choice: protect Maya and keep her power hidden, or risk everything to save his mother. As the shadow passed and the stars reappeared, he looked at the alien girl who had literally fallen into his life and made a decision that would change everything. "We'll find a way," he whispered, "to save everyone. I promise." Maya's response was a pulse of light that spoke of hope, fear, and something else, a growing warmth that felt remarkably like friendship. As they sat together in the lantern-lit hayloft, neither of them noticed the small patch of corn outside the barn, where Maya's ship had melted away. In that spot, the plants had begun to glow ever so faintly, reaching toward the sky like beacons calling into the dark. Shadows fall. The glowing corn was impossible to hide by morning. A dozen stalks shimmered with an otherworldly light, their leaves reaching toward the sky like luminous fingers. Tommy stood at the edge of the field, watching as his father knelt to examine one of the plants with bewildered fascination. "Never seen anything like it," Jack Anderson muttered, touching a glowing leaf. "Some kind of bioluminescent mutation, maybe." Tommy shifted nervously, very aware of Maya hiding in the barn behind them. Through their connection, he could feel her anxiety. The crash site was like a beacon to anyone looking closely enough, and the Shadowkin weren't the only ones they needed to worry about now. Maybe it was the meteor shower, Tommy suggested, trying to sound casual. You know, radiation or something. His father gave him a thoughtful look. Funny how it's right where I heard that noise last night. The one you said you didn't hear. Before Tommy could respond, a black SUV appeared on the dirt road leading to their farm. His heart sank as he watched it approach. Men in dark suits had been driving through town all morning, asking questions about unusual lights in the sky. Get to the house, his father said quietly, standing up. Check on your mother. Tommy wanted to protest, but he knew that tone. Instead, he hurried toward the house, taking a route that let him glance into the barn. Maya was safe in the hayloft, but her light was pulsing with warning. Through their link, he felt what she sensed. A cold emptiness approaching, like holes in the world where light should be. Inside the house, he found his mother asleep on the couch, looking more fragile than ever. The previous night's excursion to the barn had drained her, and the latest round of chemotherapy was hitting particularly hard. As Tommy adjusted her blanket, he felt Maya's presence in his mind, gentle but insistent. Images flowed between them. His mother's fading life force, the healing light Maya could provide, and the terrible darkness that would be drawn to such power. I know, Tommy whispered, but there has to be a way. A knock at the door made him jump. Through the window, he could see his father talking to two men in suits, gesturing toward the glowing corn. But something was wrong with the agent's shadows. They stretched too long in the morning sun, moving in ways shadows shouldn't. Horror struck Tommy as he realized the truth. These weren't government agents at all. The Shadowkin had learned to hide in plain sight. As if confirming his fears, the temperature around him plummeted. Frost began forming on the windows, and his mother stirred restlessly in her sleep. Through their connection, Maya's terror crashed over him like a wave. The Shadowkin were separating, one heading toward the barn while the other kept his father distracted. Tommy had seconds to make a decision. He couldn't let them find Maya, but he couldn't leave his parents. Then he remembered something Maya had shown him about her people. The luminary didn't just use light. They could share it with others. Maya, he thought desperately, focusing on their connection. Can you show me how? The knowledge flowed into him like a sunrise. How to gather light, how to hold it, how to let it flow through him. It wasn't just about brightness. It was about hope, courage, and the fundamental defiance of darkness. His hands began to glow faintly as Maya's power flowed through their bond. Tommy ran to the kitchen, yanking open drawers until he found what he needed. His mother's collection of portable mirrors, the ones she'd used to check her hair when it was still growing back. Working quickly, he placed them around the room, angling them carefully. The front door opened. Tommy heard his father's confused voice, then a sound like ice cracking. Through the window, he saw the second Shadowkin agent heading toward the barn, its human disguise beginning to slip, revealing the void beneath. Now, Tommy shouted, both aloud and through his link with Maya. Light exploded from the barn, Maya's power unleashed at full strength. At the same time, Tommy activated the makeshift array of mirrors he created. The light bounced and multiplied, filling every corner of the house and yard with brilliant, purifying radiance. The Shadowkin screamed, a sound like the vacuum of space given voice. Their human disguises melted away, revealing their true forms. Tears in reality that light itself seemed to bend around. But Maya's power, amplified and reflected, was too much for them. Where the light touched, their darkness fractured and retreated. In the chaos, Tommy ran to the barn. He found Maya floating in the hayloft, her body crackling with energy as she poured out light like a newborn star. The strain was enormous. He could feel her life force wavering under the effort. "You have to stop," he cried. "You'll burn yourself out." But Maya didn't stop. Instead, she reached for him, her star-filled eyes meeting his. In that moment, their connection deepened beyond anything they'd shared before. Tommy felt her memories, her hopes, her entire being merging with his own. Together, they became a lighthouse against the dark. The Shadowkin fled, their forms dissolving into the morning shadows. But the victory came at a terrible price. As the light faded, Maya collapsed, her glow dimming to almost nothing. Tommy caught her, feeling her life force flickering like a candle in the wind. "Tommy," his father's voice called from outside. "Son, what's going on?" Tommy looked down at Maya, then out at his parents, his father helping his mother across the yard, both of them staring at the barn in wonder. The glowing corn had spread, now filling half the field with soft light. There would be no more hiding, no more secrets. Maya stirred in his arms, her light stabilizing slightly. Through their connection, he felt her determination. The Shadowkin would return, stronger now that they knew where to find her. But they had something the darkness couldn't understand. The power of two species working together, light shared and multiplied. As his parents reached the barn door, Tommy held Maya's hand tightly. "Ready?" he asked. Maya's response was a pulse of light that filled him with warmth. Together, they would face whatever came next. The darkness had found them, but it had also found something it didn't expect. A human boy who could channel luminary light, and an alien girl who had discovered that sometimes the greatest power comes not from hiding your light, but from sharing it. Powers unite. Sarah Anderson sat in the barn's makeshift light chamber, surrounded by mirrors and Christmas lights, holding hands with an alien girl who glowed like starlight. Tommy watched anxiously as Maya's healing energy flowed around his mother, filling the space with colors he'd never seen before. "It's beautiful," his mother whispered, wonder replacing the constant pain in her eyes. "Like swimming in a sunset." After the Shadowkin attack, hiding had become impossible. Tommy's parents had taken the revelation of Maya's existence with surprising grace, though his father still muttered about close encounters of the barn kind whenever he did his evening checks on their unusual guest. "How much longer?" Tommy asked, feeling Maya's strain through their connection. Each healing session drained her dramatically, and they knew the Shadowkin could track the energy signature. "Almost done," Maya's voice chimed in his mind. "The darkness in her cells is retreating." The past week had been a careful balance between helping his mother and keeping Maya safe. The glowing corn had spread to cover most of their field now, creating a natural alarm system. The plants dimmed whenever darkness approached. Local news had picked up the story of the miracle crop, but so far, the government seemed suspiciously uninterested in investigating. The healing light faded, and Maya slumped forward, exhausted. Tommy rushed to support her while his father helped his mother stand. The changes were obvious. Sarah's skin had regained its color, and her movements were stronger, more sure. "The latest scans," his mother said softly, "they show the cancer retreating. The doctors can't explain it, but explanations would have to wait." The temperature in the barn suddenly plummeted, and the glowing corn outside went dark. Maya's grip on Tommy's hand tightened. "They're coming," her voice rang in his head. "Many more this time." Through their strengthened bond, Tommy could feel what she felt, a vast darkness approaching, like a storm cloud blotting out the stars. The Shadowkin had gathered reinforcements. "Get to the house," Tommy told his parents. "Remember the light protocols we practiced." His father hesitated. "Son, maybe we should call." "Who?" Tommy interrupted. "The police. The army? Against beings that eat light. We stick to the plan." As his parents hurried to the house, Tommy helped Maya to her feet. Their practice sessions over the past week had shown them something extraordinary. Together, they could generate more light than either could alone. Maya's luminary powers, combined with Tommy's human ability to reflect and redirect energy, created something entirely new. They climbed to the hayloft window, watching as the darkness gathered at the edge of their property. The Shadowkin had abandoned their human disguises, appearing as tears in reality that moved like oil on water. Behind them, a larger shape emerged. a void in the shape of a ship, hovering silently above the corn. "Ready?" Tommy asked, taking Maya's hand. Instead of answering, Maya shared a memory with him, her people's last stand on their homeworld, how they tried to fight the darkness alone. "Together," her voice chimed. "We fight together." They began to glow, their combined light starting as a soft shimmer and building to a radiance that made the barnwood gleam like gold. The glowing corn responded, each stalk brightening until the field looked like a sea of stars. The Shadowkin attacked in waves, their darkness flowing across the illuminated field like spilled ink. Where they touched, the corn's light extinguished, but Tommy and Maya were ready. Focusing through their bond, they sent out pulses of pure light, not just brightness, but hope and defiance given form. The Shadowkin recoiled where the light struck them, their void forms fracturing, but more kept coming. "They're stronger," Tommy gasped, feeling the strain. "There's too many." Maya's response was to pour more of herself into their connection. Suddenly, Tommy could see through her eyes, understanding light in ways human physics had never dreamed. He saw how it could bend, fold, multiply upon itself. More importantly, he saw what the Shadowkin truly feared. It wasn't light itself that hurt them. It was what light represented: connection, growth, change. The Shadowkin weren't just beings of darkness. They were beings of stasis, trying to freeze the universe in eternal night. Understanding bloomed between them like a new star. Tommy looked at the glowing corn, at the life Maya's crash had sparked on Earth, at how two different species had learned to share their light. An idea formed. "The field," he said aloud. "It's not just glowing, it's evolving, growing, changing." Maya caught his meaning instantly. Together, they reached out to the luminous plants below, not just sharing light, but encouraging the change that was already happening. The corn began to transform, its light becoming more complex, more alive. The Shadowkin sensed the shift. Their attack faltered as the field erupted with dynamic, evolving light that spoke of life and growth and endless possibility. Their static darkness couldn't comprehend it, couldn't consume it. But the victory was far from assured. As the void ship descended, bringing more darkness with it, Tommy and Maya prepared for the true battle. They had discovered their shared power, but now they would have to use it to save not just themselves, but perhaps their entire world. The coming night would determine whether light and life would prevail, or if shadows would swallow everything they loved. A new dawn. The void ship hung over the Anderson farm like a hole torn in reality, its presence making the stars above seem dim and distant. Tommy and Maya stood in their glowing field of corn, their combined light a defiant beacon against the encroaching darkness. Around them, the transformed plants pulsed with evolutionary light, each stalk a testament to what happened when different worlds came together. "They're afraid," Tommy realized, feeling the Shadowkin's hesitation through Maya's enhanced senses. "Not of our light, of what we've created. Life finds new ways." Maya's voice chimed in his mind. "That's what they've always feared. Why they hunted my people, why they try to freeze everything in darkness." The void ship's response was immediate and devastating. It released a wave of absolute darkness that rolled across the field like a tsunami of night. Where it touched, even the evolved corn began to fade, its light being dragged into the endless dark. Tommy's parents watched from the house, every available light blazing from the windows. His mother stood straighter now, Maya's healing having given her strength, but fear showed clearly on her face as she watched her son face the darkness. Tommy and Maya poured more power into their connection, their shared light forming a dome over what remained of the glowing field. But the darkness pressed in, heavy as ocean depths, cold as the space between galaxies. "We can't hold it back forever," Tommy gasped, feeling Maya's strength flagging beside him. Through their bond, Maya shared a final truth about her people. The luminary didn't just use light. We learned from it. Light doesn't only travel in straight lines. It bends. It adapts. It finds new paths. Tommy understood. Together, they stopped trying to fight the darkness directly. Instead, they let their light flow into the ground, into the roots of the transformed corn. The plants responded, their biology shifting again, becoming something entirely new. The Shadowkin pressed their advantage, their darkness descending like a shroud. But as it touched the field, something unexpected happened. The plants didn't die. They evolved. Where light and dark met, the corn began to glow with colors that existed in the space between radiance and shadow. "It's not about defeating the darkness," Tommy said in wonder. "It's about learning to grow in spite of it." The void ship's attack faltered. The Shadowkin had never encountered this before. Life that could adapt to their darkness. Light that didn't try to banish shadows, but learned to dance with them instead. Maya's grip on Tommy's hand tightened as she understood. Together, they reached out to the transformed field with their combined power. But instead of fighting the darkness, they began to weave it into their light, creating patterns of shadow and radiance that pulsed with new possibilities. The Shadowkin reeled back in confusion. Their very nature was being challenged, not by opposition, but by adaptation. The plants continued to change, now glowing with a light that incorporated darkness, creating something entirely new. In that moment, Tommy felt Maya's joy merging with his own understanding. This was why she had come to Earth, why their meeting wasn't just chance. Humans had something the luminary needed, the ability to adapt, to change, to find light even in the darkest places. The void ship above them began to ripple, its perfect darkness disturbed by the impossible sight below. The Shadowkin closest to the field were changing too, their void forms taking on hints of luminescence where they touched the transformed plants. "They're remembering," Maya's voice sang in Tommy's mind. Before they chose eternal darkness, they were beings of twilight. They lived in the balance between light and shadow. The battle changed in that moment. The Shadowkin's attack became less aggressive, more curious. Some of them drifted down to touch the glowing corn directly, their darkness mingling with the light in ways that created new patterns, new possibilities. A new dawn. The void ship hung over the Anderson farm like a hole torn in reality, its presence making the stars above seem dim and distant. Tommy and Maya stood in their glowing field of corn, their combined light a defiant beacon against the encroaching darkness. Around them, the transformed plants pulsed with evolutionary light, each stalk a testament to what happened when different worlds came together. "They're afraid," Tommy realized, feeling the Shadowkin's hesitation through Maya's enhanced senses, "not of our light, of what we've created. Life finds new ways," Maya's voice chimed in his mind. "That's what they've always feared. Why they hunted my people, why they tried to freeze everything in darkness." The void ship's response was immediate and devastating. It released a wave of absolute darkness that rolled across the field like a tsunami of night. Where it touched, even the evolved corn began to fade, its light being dragged into the endless dark. Tommy's parents watched from the house, every available light blazing from the windows. His mother stood straighter now, Maya's healing having given her strength, but fear showed clearly on her face as she watched her son face the darkness. Tommy and Maya poured more power into their connection, their shared light forming a dome over what remained of the glowing field. But the darkness pressed in, heavy as ocean depths, cold as the space between galaxies. "We can't hold it back forever," Tommy gasped, feeling Maya's strength flagging beside him. Through their bond, Maya shared a final truth about her people. The luminary didn't just use light. We learned from it. Light doesn't only travel in straight lines. It bends. It adapts. It finds new paths. Tommy understood. Together, they stopped trying to fight the darkness directly. Instead, they let their light flow into the ground, into the roots of the transformed corn. The plants responded, their biology shifting again, becoming something entirely new. The Shadowkin pressed their advantage, their darkness descending like a shroud. But as it touched the field, something unexpected happened. The plants didn't die. They evolved. Where light and dark met, The corn began to glow with colors that existed in the space between radiance and shadow. "It's not about defeating the darkness," Tommy said in wonder. "It's about learning to grow in spite of it." The void ship's attack faltered. The Shadowkin had never encountered this before. Life that could adapt to their darkness. Light that didn't try to banish shadows, but learned to dance with them instead. Maya's grip on Tommy's hand tightened as she understood. Together, they reached out to the transformed field with their combined power. But instead of fighting the darkness, they began to weave it into their light, creating patterns of shadow and radiance that pulsed with new possibilities. The Shadowkin reeled back in confusion. Their very nature was being challenged, not by opposition but by adaptation. The plants continued to change, now glowing with a light that incorporated darkness, creating something entirely new. In that moment, Tommy felt Maya's joy merging with his own understanding. This was why she had come to Earth, why their meeting wasn't just chance. Humans had something the luminary needed, the ability to adapt, to change, to find light even in the darkest places. The void ship above them began to ripple, its perfect darkness disturbed by the impossible sight below. The Shadowkin closest to the field were changing too, their void forms taking on hints of luminescence where they touched the transformed plants. "They're remembering," Maya's voice sang in Tommy's mind. Before they chose eternal darkness, they were beings of twilight. They lived in the balance between light and shadow. The battle changed in that moment. The Shadowkin's attack became less aggressive, more curious. Some of them drifted down to touch the glowing corn directly, their darkness mingling with the light in ways that created new patterns, new possibilities. Tommy's mother stepped out onto the porch, her restored strength allowing her to walk unassisted. Where the healed cancer cells in her body had once been points of darkness, they now glowed with the same in-between light as the corn, transformed rather than destroyed. The void ship pulsed once more, but this time it was a signal rather than an attack. Across the field, the Shadowkin began to withdraw, but not in defeat. They moved differently now, their darkness less absolute, hints of light playing at their edges. As the ship disappeared into the night sky, Tommy turned to Maya. Her glow had changed too, incorporating subtle shadows that made her light seem richer, more complete. "They'll be back," he said, not as a warning, but as a promise. Maya nodded, her star-filled eyes now containing hints of darkness that made the stars seem brighter. "Not as hunters," she chimed, "but as learners. Your world has shown them something they thought impossible, that light and dark can evolve together." The glowing field stretched out before them, forever changed. It would spread, they knew, carrying its message of adaptation and balance across the Earth. Humanity would have to accept not just the existence of aliens, but a new understanding of light and darkness themselves. Tommy looked at his mother, healthy and strong, then at his father who had already begun making plans to study and protect the transformed corn. Finally, he looked at Maya, the alien girl who had fallen into his life, and helped him see that the greatest powers come not from fighting what's different, but from learning to grow together. "What do we do now?" he asked. Maya's response filled their bond with warmth and possibility. "We keep growing. We keep changing. We keep sharing our light." Above them, the stars seemed brighter somehow, as if the void ship's departure had lifted a veil from the sky. But now Tommy could see the darkness between the stars too, and understand that both were necessary. Both were part of the same grand dance of creation. In a field in Minnesota, where an alien girl had crashed and a human boy had dared to help her, something new had taken root. It wasn't just the glowing corn or the healed mother, or even the transformed Shadowkin. It was a lesson about light and darkness, about change and growth, about how sometimes the bravest thing isn't fighting against the night, but learning to shine in new ways because of it. Maya squeezed Tommy's hand, and their combined light rose up to meet the stars, a beacon not of defiance but of invitation, promising anyone who saw it that here, on this small farm on this small planet, something extraordinary had begun to grow.